Right about here, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to get yourself and your soul together.
Are you ready? I said, are you ready? It's time for the Chris and Andre Show.
Apple's got a new CEO, John Ternus, which is, I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, it's one of those, I think looking back when Tim Cook was announced as the new CEO and Steve Jobs was going to be stepping down, everybody panicked. And it was like, oh my God, this is the end of Apple as we know it. And, you can love or hate some of what Tim Cook's done, but overall, Apple has continued to be a successful company in his tenure. But I think that Ternus seems like the kind of guy that will run the company for what's best for the company and not chasing, dollars left and right.
Well, you got to remember Tim Cook, he had an IBM career. He's more of an ops guy. And
Right.
Logistics, not really, he does have an engineering background. I think the upside is that Ternus is an engineer. He's focused on the hardware. So that kind of, he knows what should be done and what couldn't be done and which things where we can move to. From my understanding, he was very pivotal in the M series launch and the neural engine. And if I'm being honest, the M series is what brought me back to Apple hardware, because I was on Linux for a while because it just made sense.
Yeah.
So if he continues with that same vein, who's to say? And I do agree with a lot of people that were kind of on edge about Tim Cook being the CEO. I was, obviously. Mm-hmm. But he did a lot of good things. And I figure he's going to do the Jordan dip out when he's on top and not falling apart. So,
which was what I guess he had said, right? When he kind of had talked about his retirement, that he wasn't like, oh, I'm going to wait until things start to go down and then I'm a bail. It was like, no, I want to hand it off in good condition to the next steward,
Yeah. And it looks like Ternus has been driving a lot of their heavy projects. You sent an article about AI, and I think that kind of ties into what I think Ternus will do for Apple. Their position has not been to, and I think it actually makes sense now. Their position has not been to build another quote unquote AI thing. And the article you sent actually really coincides with how I believe about it. Believe about AI. David had mentioned that, and here's a quote. My thought is I'm skeptical of superintelligence and computing being something in the near term, but his quote is, human data is like a kind of fossil fuel that has provided an amazing shortcut. You can also think of systems that learn for themselves as a renewable fuel, something that can just learn and learn and learn forever without limit. And a second quote, which I grabbed out of that article, was, I think of our mission as making first contact with superintelligence. By superintelligence, I really mean something incredible. It should discover new forms of science or technology or government or economics for itself. And that key part to me is for itself.
Right.
So although we keep branding AI as AI, it's not that. It's just basically lowering the barrier to automation, which I believe is the core of what modern software creation is about. It's automation and efficiency. And that's cool. I don't have a problem with that as a developer. But I think that the misnomer is that AI is going to do more than what it can actually do, because it can't do it by itself. The purview of the software is limited to what LLMs have been able to provide over the last 10 or 15 years. But what it's done is democratize and, again, lower the barrier for some people to get into what developers and architects have figured out a long time ago. Which is efficiency and automation.
Yeah, no, I thought it was really interesting, the idea that Apple has kind of been gearing their hardware to run localized versions of some of these, like the type of LLMs.
Apple, on the other hand, seems to be going down the more local hardware route. Their Mac and MacBook Pro range offer massive amounts of unified memory, sometimes surpassing over 100 gigabytes. That means ever more larger language models can be run locally on your device, importantly, without needing the internet.
You're not tapping into a network and you're not feeding all of your data and inputs into it in order to improve it. It's more like you can basically kind of mold your own LLM at a local level. And I thought it was really interesting because I was doing something, or we were driving in the car yesterday, and my oldest daughter has been really intrigued by the Corvettes that she sees, the modern Corvettes on the road. And so she was asking, she was like, how much does... They are. They're, I mean, a great looking car. And so she was like, well, how much does one of those cost? I was like, honestly, I don't even know what they charge for those. Let's ask, and so we're driving. And so I asked Siri, and she was like, I can't actually do that for you, but I could look that up with ChatGPT. So they basically have a way that you can authorize ChatGPT to then basically fetch answers for you through Siri. And I had not heard about this partnership that they'd had,
Then you're a year late.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Easily.
Yeah, but you're probably not watching WWDC like I am then. So,
no.
Yes.
No.
Continue.
Definitely not.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I mean, I'm not a big ChatGPT, like AI LLM user as it is. And so even when that popped up, I was like, no, I'm good. I'm really not trying to help Sam Altman in any way that I can. But I do think that it reinforced, especially after we had just talked about this idea of Apple's approach to AI, like that, they saw this as a better path forward for now, doing this partnership with ChatGPT, as opposed to trying to build, an AI version of Siri, essentially.
Well, and this is not, it's the technology that that runs LLMs and these models way outside of my scope of like understanding the nitty gritty. Mm-hmm. But the general parts I do understand. It's not, and I say this from, I actually have a couple of models running on one of my servers, right? And so I tinker with it. Still not something I want to invest a lot of time in understanding the what, whys, and hows for. The compute needed for these models, like if you really think about it, it's not a lot. It's when you try to do the really scientific workloads, that's when it becomes the power consumption. When you're trying to turn it into a commodity, that's when you need data centers. So Apple's like, they're dead on. You don't. The problem is that we're trying to make it a product to sell, and I don't think that's going to long term be the final product.
Yeah, it's a stepping stone, right, for what I think a lot of people are hoping AI becomes, right? Which is this sort of like generative super intelligence type of thing. I don't know how much I really want that. Personally,
it's not it's not a near future thing. I really don't believe it is. I think that it's wishful thinking and a lot of hype that makes that the conversation. Yeah. And I agree with Apple's approach of, I'll just use I'll use ChatGPT's resource, so OpenAI's resource. I use Claude's resources, but it's not something they should invest in.
I thought it was funny. I think you had sent the video that was talking about John Ternus being announced as the Apple CEO, and they were talking in the video about like some of the projects he'd worked on that were not super successful, and they they talked about the touch bar, which I kind of laughed at because yes, like it didn't last. It wasn't a horrible idea, right? Like there was some thought behind it. It wasn't just like, let's slap this on here. Like I understood the idea of having like a an adjustable control bar, basically, right, where you can change it for different things. But I think the actual just usefulness of that type of thing wasn't what they expected. But well, go ahead.
The Stream Deck is the obvious evolution of that idea, right? So it's like the little box where you can put little widgets on it to launch applications. I see a lot of people that do graphic design use them. Some podcasters or streamers use them. So I think the idea itself was a good product. It just wasn't the right thing to use.
Exactly. Yeah. And the other thing that I picked up from that video that I thought was really interesting was him being so adamant about the potential for the iPad, and that basically having it be an oversized iPhone was a horrible plan forward, and that they needed to take it seriously and kind of build the hardware capabilities and then the software to match it, to create what it is today, you know.
I think that if you're to take Steve Jobs and separate them into two people, you'd probably have their outgoing CEO and
their incoming CEO.
And their incoming CEO.
Yeah.
And no knocks to Johnny Ive, but they'll figure out design. Like, I think a lot of the design language that Apple uses, not to discredit Johnny Ive's vision, because he's like for lack of a better word, a genius at industrial design, because he gets it. And I think it takes a certain talent to do that. But I'm sure there's enough people at Apple that can carry that forward.
I agree.
With the iPhone Air, I believe it's called. I mean, that's a Johnny Ive-ish type of thing, and it seems to be doing well.
On the new the MacBook Neo,
right? So making Apple still a premium product, which I believe it is, but also making it more accessible. I think that they need to figure that part out too. So I'm generally pleased with what they're doing in that aspect and the future of the company. I mean, I've been an Apple user for a really, really long time. And I remember when they went bankrupt, when they had clones and all this other stuff, and somehow they seem to keep figuring it out, and their staying power has surpassed, the worst case scenario that people throw at it. So,
yeah. I mean, it really, even looking back at like the early days, Steve Jobs and whatnot, that was a company that I feel like, maybe it's somewhat revisionist history, but at least from what I've read and watched, that a lot of people didn't think that it stood a chance against the IBMs and some of the other, big players in personal computing at the time.
Oh, that's not true.
At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.
I think that says, so there was Silicon Graphics had, they cornered the market and like designs like computers and things, all these, like the high powered computing stuff went to Silicon Graphics. I remember when I was younger, I had a friend of mine, his dad was some type of scientist.
I'm something of a scientist myself.
And he just bought a new Silicon Graphics desktop. It cost like $25,000. And it's like something unheard of, right?
Yeah.
But it was cool. And this is my closet nerd days, so no people didn't really know I was into like geeky stuff like that. But Apple's problem was they were in the middle of Silicon Graphics and the IBM clones, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And they became like so focused on a particular market, being designers, that they kind of forgot that other people could use the computers. And Gil Amelio,
I was like, Emilio!
was the CEO that actually kind of led them down this whole clone strategy of to increase market share. And I think it would have worked, but they had just, if I remember this correctly, they were trying to figure out their next operating system, and they were dealing with Steve Jobs through Pixar-ish, and then somehow he came back and he was going to bring Next OS to be their next OS, because the 86 platform started to show its age. The PowerPC chip was like lights and, just leaps and bounds ahead of the 86 architecture. Mm-hmm. But Motorola and IBM couldn't get it to go fast enough. So that was kind of like, it was just this perfect storm of all of the, to bring back Steve to kind of give the company a better path forward. And so maybe it's not really revisionist like history, but there were a lot of things that happened during that time where they kicked Steve out. He somehow got back in, and it was just the perfect, it was a perfect storm to get
everything lined up just right for them to be able to take advantage like they did.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
and when I say revisionist history, I'm speaking mostly about like the dramatizations of.
Well, that was just a dramatization.
These stories that have been told over and over again now, like all the different Apple movies and the made-for-TV movies and stuff like that. It's all.
IBM, they're going to want all our stuff. IBM, their history.
Yeah, that's fair. And some people say that Microsoft losing that case was a lifeline. I think they would have figured it out. Because if you look at the Mac OS and Windows like today, one company obviously had a path forward. The other one just kind of, runs around in circles chasing its own tail.
7 years ago when I started this job, I made the mistake of not asking whether or not I had a choice between Mac and Windows, and like everybody was using Windows, so I just went with a Windows machine, and I hated it for like the 3 years that I used it. It was just the bane of my freaking existence. And it wasn't like it was a Lenovo, and it wasn't like the quality of the hardware or anything like that. It was just none of it worked right. Yeah, Windows in particular, it was like almost every day that I would show up and try to print something, it would show that the printer was connected, the printer is on, but my computer would not communicate with the printer. And every time I'd be like, it'd be like, oh, the printer's busy, the printer's offline. I'm like, but it's not, it's right here. I can see it. It's online. Like
the lights are on.
Yeah, seriously. Oh, just drove me crazy.
Yeah, so I could like talk about this topic all day. Like,
it's great though. Thank you for the history lesson there, because that's very helpful in understanding like the actual backstory of all of this.
Yeah, I think that Apple they had I was excited about before the first version of Mac OS 10 was supposedly going to be Next OS basically. And if you look at how the Swift like language is, you'll still see NS object. So that's next step, basically. So I get to go back all the time mentally going, oh, this I know where this came from. So so there's a lot of like I think Apple for a time was just lost, and there was pressure from Compaq.
This is the Compaq Presario 5000T with one-touch internet access. That for just $8.99 lets your family see the whole world wider.
HP, you've got Dell was a start like a running away with stuff.
Dude, you're getting a Dell. Easy to buy, easy to own, easy as Dell.
Gateway was a thing.
I needed a high-performance machine, and that's what I got.
And they were great. I felt comfortable right away.
Great big boxes look like a cow.
I got a fork.
Gateway computers feature the Intel Pentium processor.
I had a compact. That was our first internet connected home PC. No, I'm sorry. It was an Acer was the first one. The compact was the second one we got when we moved here. Yeah. I remember going to it wasn't Circuit City, but some giant electronics store and buying that computer and like the excitement. I played Doom 2. I played Castles 2. Yeah, it was, we had AOL, like those were the days, man.
Yeah, I mean I remember the first Mac I bought, and it was like 93 or 94, and I remember saying I will never use Windows again. Like it was like I will never use Windows again. It was just such a different experience.
It's funny.
Yeah, that's wild, but that was my, and I think it was because I hooked up a printer and it just worked. I was like, what? And my favorite operating system used to be Windows NT. So like when I geek out,
you're a nerd.
I use some geeky shit.
NT is such a nerdy thing to have that be your favorite version of Windows. I'm sorry. I mean, like NT was a great platform. Don't get me wrong.
It worked.
But it worked. It worked. Yeah. And that was the whole thing.
It was solid. It worked. And I was like, yeah. And I don't know. I don't remember why, or I do remember. Well, I was influenced to buy the Mac because when I was at the computer store, there was a Windows computer that had the blue screen of death. And
that was all you needed.
Well, yeah. My ex-wife was like, you should, I don't like that. And I was like, okay, what about, and we just happened, there was a Mac or an Apple, I don't remember what model, was right next to it. She goes, let's buy that one. And I was like, okay. I'm thinking computers are computers, right?
Yep.
And I didn't realize the true difference between Windows and a Mac. But yeah.
Thanks for checking out the Chris and Andre Show. This is the part where we ask you to like and subscribe. You could also leave a comment and share this with someone you think would find useful. For more content like this, head on over to chrisandandreshow.com. Remember, stay sane, stay safe, and stay salty. We'll see you on the next one.